Whispers of the Atlantic. The fog hangs over the North Atlantic like a gray shroud, thick enough to swallow ships whole. It's April 1942, and somewhere in that vast, restless ocean, a convoy of merchant vessels moves through water that holds more secrets than any boardroom you've ever entered. The weight these sailors carry. It's different from yours, perhaps, but the sleepless hours, the constant calculation of risk, the responsibility for others' lives. These burdens echo across the decades. You know that feeling, don't you? When the fog of uncertainty settles over everything you're building, when visibility drops to mere meters ahead, and yet you must keep moving forward. Tonight, as your mind churns through tomorrow's challenges, let us drift back to those gray waters where other souls wrestled with the invisible weight of command, of survival, of hope deferred, but never abandoned. The convoy stretches across several miles of ocean, 43 vessels in total. Merchant ships laden with grain, steel, and ammunition. Tankers heavy with fuel oil. A few passenger liners pressed into wartime service. Each ship maintains its position through instinct more than sight, their captains reading the subtle signs, the distant throb of engines, the occasional glimpse of a shadow in the mist, the careful choreography of vessels that dare not break radio silence. At the heart of this floating city of steel and timber sails the SS Britannic Hope, a cargo vessel that has crossed these waters 17 times since the war began. Her hull bears the scars of North Atlantic storms, her crew the deeper marks of watching sister ships vanish beneath the waves. Tonight, she carries more than her manifest suggests. She carries the dreams of farmers whose grain fills her holds, the prayers of families whose sons work her decks, the quiet determination of a nation that refuses to starve. On her starboard watch stands ordinary seaman Thomas Baker, 22 years old, though the Atlantic has aged him in ways that numbers cannot measure. His hands, wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold an hour ago, shake not from the chill, but from something deeper. The weight he carries, it's written in the set of his shoulders, the way his eyes scan the fog for shapes that shouldn't be there. Thomas joined the Merchant Navy 8 months ago, leaving behind a clerk's position in a Liverpool shipping office. The irony wasn't lost on him then. He'd spent 2 years filing manifests for voyages he'd never make, calculating tonnage for ships he'd never board, processing insurance claims for vessels that never returned. The weight of those paper losses had seemed abstract until he felt the deck roll beneath his feet for the first time. Now, as he peers into the fog, Thomas understands what those insurance forms never captured. The way sleep becomes a luxury you can't afford when every shadow might be a periscope. The manner in which your stomach learns to carry a constant knot of tension, tight as a sailor's hitch. The peculiar exhaustion that comes not from physical labor, though there's plenty of that, but from the relentless mental arithmetic of survival. How many hours since the last U-boat sighting? 37. How many miles to the next course change? 42. How many ships lost from convoys in the past month? Thomas stopped counting at 15. The fog seems to muffle even thought itself. It wraps around the convoy like cotton wool, dampening sound until the world shrinks to the immediate. The creak of rigging, the whisper of water against the hull, the soft footsteps of the watch making their rounds. In this gray cocoon, time moves differently. Minutes stretch like hours, while entire watches pass in what feels like heartbeats. You understand this distortion of time, don't you? Those nights when your mind races through scenarios, calculating outcomes, weighing decisions that will affect not just you, but everyone who depends on what you're building. The way a single anxious thought can expand to fill hours, while crucial deadlines approach with startling speed. Thomas Baker's fog is different from the uncertainty that clouds your vision, but the feeling is remarkably similar. In the convoy's center, the Commodore ship maintains its steady course. Her captain, a man whose beard has grown gray over 30 years at sea, stands on his bridge studying charts that tell him everything except what he most needs to know: where the enemy waits. The weight he carries is multiplied by 43. The burden of every vessel under his protection, every soul who trusts his judgment. He's made this crossing before, guided convoys through waters that have claimed good ships and better men. Each voyage teaches him something new about leadership under pressure, about making decisions with incomplete information, about the peculiar courage required to project confidence when your own certainty wavers like candlelight in a draught. The fog plays tricks with sound. A creaking timber becomes a torpedo tube opening. The distant splash of a wave becomes the sound of a submarine surfacing. Every shadow holds potential menace. Every unusual noise demands investigation. The crew moves with practiced quiet, their conversations reduced to essential whispers, their laughter saved for daylight hours when the fog might lift and reveal empty seas. Thomas shifts his position, trying to ease the tension in his back. 8 hours on watch, 4 hours of fitful sleep, then 8 hours again. The cycle has become his entire world, punctuated only by meals eaten standing up and letters written but never sent. What could he tell his mother in Liverpool? That the sea is vast and gray and holds secrets? That he's learned to sleep through anything except the sudden absence of engine noise? That he's discovered a kind of courage he never knew he possessed? The convoy maintains its zigzag pattern, a defensive dance choreographed by experience and desperation. Every 12 minutes, the ships alter course slightly, making their path unpredictable to any submarine that might be tracking their progress. It's a delicate balance. Too predictable, and they become easy targets. Too erratic, and they risk collision in the fog. This is the mathematics of survival, calculated not in boardrooms but on pitching decks, where the cost of miscalculation isn't measured in lost revenue but in lost lives. Thomas has learned this arithmetic, though they never taught it in his Liverpool office. The weight of these calculations settles into your bones, becomes part of how you move through the world. The fog begins to thin slightly as the convoy moves through a patch of calmer water. For a few moments, Thomas can make out the shapes of nearby vessels, dark silhouettes against the gray, their running lights carefully dimmed. The sight brings both comfort and fresh anxiety. Comfort in knowing they're not alone in this vast emptiness. Anxiety in realizing how visible they might be to unfriendly eyes. In the distance, barely audible over the sound of engines, comes the low moan of a foghorn. Once, twice, 3 times. The signal passes from ship to ship, a reminder of course and speed, a confirmation that the convoy remains intact. Thomas counts the responses, matching each horn blast to a vessel in his mental map of their formation. All accounted for, all maintaining station. But foghorns carry further than intended recipients. Sound travels strangely over water, especially in conditions like these. What serves as reassurance to the convoy might also serve as a beacon to those who hunt them. The weight of this knowledge settles over the watch like another layer of mist. The Atlantic stretches endlessly in all directions, indifferent to human struggles, unmoved by the small dramas played out on its surface. It has swallowed empires and merchant fleets with equal dispassion. Tonight, it cradles this convoy with the same neutral embrace it offers to the predators that stalk beneath its waves. Thomas thinks about the cargo holds below, packed with grain that will become bread on London tables, steel that will become ships and tanks and bridges. The weight of civilian hope rests in those holds, the faith of a nation that these vessels will complete their journey. Every successful crossing is a small victory against the forces that would starve them into submission. But tonight, in the fog, with visibility measured in yards rather than miles, that victory feels distant and uncertain. Tonight, there is only the watch, the waiting, and the weight of responsibility that transforms ordinary men into guardians of something larger than themselves. The fog swirls and eddies around the convoy, revealing glimpses of other ships before swallowing them again. In these brief moments of clarity, Thomas catches sight of faces on distant decks, other young men carrying similar weights, scanning similar horizons, wrestling with similar fears. They are strangers bound by circumstance, united in purpose, alone together in the vast gray emptiness of the North Atlantic. As the watch continues, as the fog maintains its embrace, as the convoy pushes forward through waters that hold both promise and peril, Thomas Baker stands his post. The weight he carries grows heavier with each passing hour, but he carries it nonetheless. Because someone must. Because the alternative is unthinkable. Because in the fog of war, as in the fog of uncertainty that clouds your own path, the only choice is to keep moving forward, one careful step at a time. The night is far from over, and the fog shows no sign of lifting. Signals in the dark. The night is far from over, and the fog shows no sign of lifting. But in the depths of the convoy, signals pierce through the darkness. Messages that carry the weight of hundreds of lives. Deep within the belly of HMS Vigilant, the convoy's lead escort, a different kind of watchfulness unfolds. Here, in a cramped radio room no larger than a closet, leading telegraphist William Morris hunches over his equipment. The soft amber glow of vacuum tubes bathes his weathered face as his fingers dance across the Morse key with practiced precision. Dot, dash, dot, 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 dash, dash, dash. The rhythm is hypnotic, almost meditative. Each tap carries urgency across the black Atlantic waters. Morris has been at this for 6 hours straight, his shoulders aching, his eyes burning from the dim light. But he cannot rest. In his hands flows the lifeblood of the convoy. Information. You know this feeling, don't you? The weight of being the conduit through which vital intelligence flows. The emails that arrive at midnight, demanding immediate attention. The messages that can shift the trajectory of everything you're building. Like Morris, you've felt the burden of being the bridge between crisis and resolution, between uncertainty and clarity. The telegraphist's latest transmission crackles across the ether. ASDIC contact bearing 270. Investigating. Stand by. Somewhere out there in the fog, one of the corvettes has detected something. A shadow beneath the waves. A whisper of metal where only water should be. Morris's fingers pause for just a moment, then resume their urgent tapping, relaying the message to every ship in the convoy. Above him, on the bridge of HMS Vigilant, Captain Archibald Campbell receives the decoded message with the stoic calm that has carried him through 30 years at sea. He is a man carved from the same granite as the Scottish Highlands where he was born. Tall, lean, with steel-gray hair, and eyes that have seen too much. The weight of command sits upon his shoulders like an old, familiar coat. Campbell understands what you understand. That leadership is not about having all the answers. It's about making decisions with incomplete information. About moving forward when the path ahead is shrouded in uncertainty. Tonight, He holds the lives of 3,000 souls in his weathered hands. "Signal the convoy," he says quietly to his communications officer. "Reduce speed to 6 knots. Maintain formation." His voice carries no trace of the anxiety that gnaws at his stomach. This is the loneliest part of command. The moments when you must project confidence while your mind races through countless scenarios, each more dire than the last. Campbell has learned, as you have learned, that strength is not the absence of fear. It is action in spite of fear. The bridge falls silent except for the soft hum of equipment and the distant sound of Morris's key, still tapping out its vital rhythms below. Campbell moves to the chart table, where the convoy's position is marked with careful precision. Red pins show the merchant ships, blue pins the escorts, but it's the empty spaces between them that command his attention, the dark waters where death might be lurking. In times like these, the ancient Stoics would remind us that we cannot control the storm, only our response to it. Campbell embodies this wisdom without ever having read Marcus Aurelius. He has learned through hard experience that panic is a luxury no leader can afford. Every decision must be measured, deliberate, rooted in reason rather than emotion. The radio crackles again. Morris's voice, steady despite the tension. "Signal from HMS Buttercup, sir. Contact lost. Resuming patrol." Campbell nods slowly. The shadow beneath the waves has vanished, melting back into the depths like a half-remembered nightmare. But he knows it's still out there. They always are. The threats to what you're building, the challenges that lurk just beyond the horizon of your awareness. "Very good," Campbell replies. "Maintain heightened alert. All lookouts to remain vigilant." He thinks of his own son, somewhere in the Pacific aboard a destroyer. The war has scattered families across the globe like leaves in an autumn gale. Campbell carries this personal weight alongside his professional burden, just as you carry the weight of those who depend on you. Employees, investors, family members whose lives are intertwined with the success of your venture. Below decks, Morris continues his vigil. His fingers are cramping now, but he pushes through the discomfort. He thinks of his wife Sarah, back in Portsmouth, probably lying awake wondering if he's safe. She doesn't know about nights like this, about the constant tension that thrums through the ship like electricity through copper wire. The Morse key feels heavy in his hand, but he maintains the rhythm. Dot, dash, dot. Dot, dot, dot. Each transmission is a lifeline, connecting scattered ships across miles of hostile ocean. In peacetime, Morris was a postal clerk, sorting letters and packages with methodical care. Now he sorts messages that determine life and death. You understand this transformation, don't you? How ordinary people rise to extraordinary circumstances when necessity demands it. How the weight of responsibility can forge strength from the most unlikely materials. Morris never imagined he would hold such vital responsibility, just as you perhaps never imagined carrying the weight you now bear. The fog presses against the bridge windows like a living thing, thick and impenetrable. Campbell checks his watch. 347 hours. Dawn is still hours away, and with it, the blessed visibility that might reveal friend from foe. Until then, they navigate by instruments and intuition, by the accumulated wisdom of decades spent reading the moods of the sea. Another message arrives, this time from the convoy commodore aboard the merchant vessel Empire Star. Request permission to adjust course 5 degrees starboard. Campbell considers this carefully. The Commodore is trying to avoid a suspected patrol area, but any course change creates vulnerability. Ships might lose formation in the fog, Stragglers become easy prey. Negative, Campbell finally responds. Maintain present course and speed. It's a hard decision, but the right one. Sometimes leadership means saying no to reasonable requests because you see a larger picture. Sometimes it means accepting calculated risks to avoid greater dangers. The night stretches ahead like an endless tunnel. Campbell knows that dawn will bring new challenges, new decisions, new weights to bear. But for now, in this moment, suspended between darkness and light, he simply endures. He holds his position, maintains his watch, and trusts in the steady rhythm of Morris's key below. In the radio room, the telegraphist adjusts his headphones and prepares for another long hour of vigilance. The signals continue to flow through the darkness, carrying hope and warning in equal measure. Each dot and dash a testament to human determination, to the refusal to surrender in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. The fog may hide the horizon, but it cannot extinguish the signals that bind this floating community together. Through the longest nights, communication endures. Coffee and contemplation. And in that communication, in those signals that pierce the darkness, there is something profoundly human. Something that speaks to the weight you carry as you build what matters most. Thomas Baker makes his way below deck, his watch finally ended. The corridors of the SS Britannic Hope are narrow and dimly lit, lined with pipes that carry steam and purpose through the ship's mechanical heart. His footsteps echo softly against the metal flooring, a rhythm as familiar now as his own heartbeat. The mess hall beckons with its promise of warmth and brief respite. Here, beneath the waterline, the fog cannot reach. Here, there is only the steady thrum of engines and the quiet fellowship of men who understand what it means to carry responsibility in uncertain times. He pours himself coffee from the large metal pot that never seems to empty. The liquid is dark as midnight, strong enough to wake the dead, or keep the living alert through another long night. The chipped enamel mug grows warm in his hands, and he cradles it like a small treasure. There is something sacred about this moment, something that transcends the circumstances that brought him here. The coffee tastes of home and distant memories, of mornings when the greatest worry was whether the milk had turned overnight. Thomas settles at one of the scarred wooden tables. These surfaces have borne the weight of countless meals, countless conversations, countless moments of quiet contemplation. Each mark and stain tells a story of men who came before, who sat in this same spot and wondered about tomorrow. The overhead light casts long shadows across the mess hall. In this gentle illumination, Thomas allows his mind to wander, to drift back to the life he left behind when he signed on with the Merchant Navy. He thinks of his father's workshop, the smell of sawdust and wood polish, the patient way the old man would explain the grain of different timbers. "Every piece of wood has its own character, Tommy," his father would say, running weathered hands along a plank of oak. "Your job is to understand what it wants to become." Perhaps that wisdom applies to more than carpentry. Perhaps it speaks to the work you do now, understanding the grain of what you're building, working with its natural character rather than against it. The Merchant Navy had called to Thomas not for adventure, but for purpose. In those uncertain months of 1941, as the war consumed Europe, he had felt the weight of sitting idle. His skills were needed. His country required men willing to brave the Atlantic's dangers to keep the lifelines open. But tonight, in the quiet of the mess hall, he wonders if he truly understood what he was choosing. The romance of the sea had given way to the reality of endless vigilance, of sleeping in shifts and waking to alarms that might mean anything or nothing. Yet there is something here he had not expected to find. A clarity born of shared purpose. A understanding that what they do matters. That every successful crossing represents lives saved, hope sustained, civilization preserved. From somewhere deep in the ship comes the sound of metal on metal, the rhythmic percussion of maintenance work that never ceases. The sound draws Thomas's attention to Chief Engineer Maria Silva, who has just entered the mess hall with oil-stained hands and the satisfied expression of someone who has solved a particularly stubborn problem. Maria is a woman who commands respect through competence rather than volume. In a world still learning to accept women in roles of technical authority, she has earned her position through an almost mystical understanding of marine engines and the complex systems that keep a ship alive. "Evening, Baker," she says, pouring her own cup of coffee. "How was the watch?" "Quiet enough," Thomas replies. "Fog's still thick as porridge up there." Maria nods, settling across from him. Her presence brings a different energy to the space. Not the nervous tension of men on watch, but the steady confidence of someone who knows exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. "I've been thinking about home lately," she says, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "My grandfather's garage in Liverpool. He taught me that engines are like people. They'll tell you what's wrong if you know how to listen." Thomas understands this sentiment. In the merchant navy, you learn to listen. To the ship, to the sea, to the subtle changes in rhythm that might signal danger or opportunity. It is a skill that serves leaders well, this ability to hear what is not being said. "What made you choose engineering?" he asks. Maria smiles, an expression that transforms her serious features. "Choice suggests I had options. My father died when I was 12. Mother needed help with the bills. Grandfather needed help in the garage. Turned out I had a knack for understanding why things stopped working." Her story is not uncommon in these times. War has a way of revealing capabilities that peacetime never demanded. It pushes people beyond their assumed limitations, forces them to discover strengths they never knew they possessed. "And now here you are," Thomas observes, "keeping this entire ship running." "Here I am," she agrees. "Though some nights I wonder if my grandfather could have imagined his granddaughter maintaining engines in the middle of the Atlantic." There is something profound in this moment, in the recognition that we rarely know where our choices will lead us. The path you're walking now, the weight you carry as you build something meaningful, perhaps it too will lead to destinations you cannot yet imagine. The coffee grows cooler in their cups, but neither seems inclined to leave. There is comfort in this shared silence, in the presence of another person who understands the peculiar burden of responsibility in uncertain times. Maria speaks again, her voice quiet but clear. "The engine room is like a meditation for me. All those moving parts, each one essential, each one dependent on the others. When everything works together, there's a kind of music to it." Thomas nods. He thinks of the convoy moving through the fog above. Dozens of ships, hundreds of men, all working in coordination toward a common goal. Each vessel essential, each crew member playing their part in something larger than themselves. "It's beautiful work," he says, and means it. "It is," Maria agrees, "even when it's difficult. Especially when it's difficult." The mess hall grows quieter as the night deepens. Soon, they will return to their duties. Maria to her engines, Thomas to whatever the next watch may bring. But for now, they sit in companionable silence, drawing strength from coffee and conversation, and the knowledge that they are not alone in carrying their respective burdens. Outside, the fog continues its patient work of concealment. But here below deck, in the warm circle of light cast by a single bulb, two people have found a moment of clarity, a brief respite from the weight of what they carry, and renewed purpose for the work that lies ahead. Beneath the waves. The conversation lingers in Thomas's mind as he makes his way through the ship's narrow corridors, but his thoughts are drawn inevitably toward the steady thrumming that pulses through every rivet and beam. The engine room calls, not with urgency, but with the relentless rhythm that has become the heartbeat of their small world. Down here, 3 levels below the fog-shrouded deck, Maria Silva moves through her domain with the quiet confidence of someone who understands that everything depends on what happens in this cramped, sweltering space. The engines, these massive, patient machines, they ask nothing of the war above. They know only the language of pressure and heat, of oil and steam, of metal expanding and contracting in endless, faithful cycles. You know this feeling, don't you? This sense of working in the engine room of what you're building. While others see only the smooth progress above deck, the weight you carry often lives in these hidden spaces, in the infrastructure that no one celebrates, in the systems that must never fail, in the careful maintenance of what keeps everything moving forward. The air down here is thick, almost solid with heat and humidity. Every breath carries the taste of machine oil and coal dust, the metallic tang of superheated metal. The noise, it's not quite deafening, but it fills every corner of consciousness. The great pistons driving back and forth, the hiss of steam through countless valves, the steady churn of the propeller shaft that pushes them through dark waters toward an uncertain dawn. Maria checks the pressure gauges with practiced eyes, the same routine she's performed thousands of times, but never carelessly. Each reading tells a story. The boiler pressure? Steady at the optimal range. The oil temperature? Running slightly warm, but within acceptable limits. The bearing temperatures? All nominal. These numbers, they're not just data. They're the vital signs of a living system that 67 souls depend upon for their survival. Her hands, calloused from years of this work, move with unconscious precision as she adjusts a valve here, tightens a fitting there. This is maintenance as meditation, the kind of focused attention that leaves no room for the fears that multiply in idle moments. The U-boats may be out there, invisible beneath the waves, but down here there is only the immediate reality of keeping these engines running smoothly through whatever the Atlantic may demand. The claustrophobia is real, but so is the strange comfort of it. These steel walls, barely wide enough for 2 people to pass, they create a world within a world. Outside, the convoy struggles through fog and uncertainty. Down here, the laws are simpler. Pressure seeks release. Heat flows toward cold. Metal fatigues and must be replaced. Oil breaks down and must be changed. These are problems with solutions. Challenges that respond to knowledge and careful attention. Young Peters, barely 18, works alongside Maria with the concentrated intensity of someone learning that competence is survival. He's been on this ship for 3 months now, and the engine room has become his university. Every sound has meaning. The slight change in pitch that indicates a bearing beginning to wear. The subtle shift in vibration that suggests an impeller blade damaged by debris. The way steam pressure builds differently when the coal quality changes. "Listen," Maria says quietly, her voice barely audible above the mechanical symphony. "Do you hear that slight knock in number 2 cylinder?" Peters tilts his head, concentrating, learning to hear what the engines are trying to tell him. This is education that no classroom could provide, the kind of deep knowledge that comes only from months of patient attention, from understanding that these machines are partners rather than tools. The vibration runs through everything, through the deck plates, through the bulkheads, through the bones of anyone who spends time down here. After a while, you don't notice it consciously, but your body learns its rhythm. When you finally reach port and step onto solid ground, the stillness feels wrong. Your inner ear expects the gentle roll of the ship, the constant tremor of engines working. Without it, the world seems somehow incomplete. But tonight, in these waters, that vibration carries an edge of vulnerability that everyone feels, but no one speaks aloud. Because they all know what lies beneath the waves. The enemy that moves in silence, that can strike without warning from the depths. Every merchant sailor has heard the stories. Ships that simply disappeared. One moment, part of the convoy. The next, nothing but empty ocean and scattered debris. The engine room, for all its noise and heat and mechanical certainty, sits below the waterline. If a torpedo finds its mark, this becomes a trap rather than a sanctuary. The thought lives in the back of every engineer's mind, not as panic, but as a quiet awareness that shapes how they work, how they think about their responsibilities. Maria knows this weight intimately. She's lost ships before, felt the deck plates buckle beneath her feet, watched seawater pour through ruptured hull plates while steam pipes burst like broken arteries. She's learned that survival sometimes means abandoning the engines you've tended like children, leaving them to the dark water while you fight your way toward whatever hope the lifeboats might offer. But that knowledge, rather than paralyzing her, has refined her dedication to this moment, this watch, this careful attention to pressure and temperature, and the thousand small details that keep them moving through the night. Because you cannot control what rises from the depths, but you can ensure that your engines are ready for whatever demands the next hours might bring. Above them, far above the steel ceiling of their mechanical world, the stars have begun to emerge as the fog finally starts to thin. The same constellations that have guided sailors for millennia. Polaris holding steady in the north, Orion rising in the east. The Southern Cross invisible from these latitudes, but somehow present in the imagination of anyone who has spent years following the sea roads. The watch continues. Maria and Peters, and the handful of others who tend these engines through the dark hours, they are the unseen foundation upon which everything else depends. The bridge may navigate, the lookouts may watch for threats, the wireless operators may coordinate with the convoy, but all of it rests upon the steady revolution of these great machines, the patient burning of coal, the careful management of steam and pressure, and the controlled explosions that drive them forward through whatever waits in the darkness ahead. This is how the essential work gets done, not with fanfare or recognition, but with the quiet competence of people who understand that civilization itself depends upon someone maintaining the engines, someone checking the gauges, someone listening carefully to the sounds that reveal what needs attention before it becomes crisis. The night deepens around them, but the engine room continues its faithful work, carrying them all toward whatever dawn awaits beyond the horizon. Letters and longing. Above deck, the watch changes with quiet efficiency. Men emerge from the warmth of the ship's interior into the cold Atlantic night, their breath forming small clouds that dissipate quickly in the salt air. The fog has begun to lift slightly, revealing patches of star-scattered sky that seem impossibly distant from this world of steel and water. Thomas Baker climbs the narrow companionway, feeling the familiar weight of the mail satchel against his shoulder. Tonight, like every night when conditions allow, he carries letters between the watch stations. Small pieces of home that travel these gray waters alongside cargo and hope. In the radio room, leading telegraphist Morris looks up from his equipment as Thomas approaches. The steady rhythm of Morse code fills the small space. Dots and dashes that connect their floating world to the vast network of ships spread across the Atlantic. Morris accepts his letter with a nod of gratitude, his fingers already reaching for the familiar handwriting that carries news from a village in Yorkshire, where his mother tends a garden and worries about her son among the waves. "Anything from the Admiralty?" Thomas asks quietly. "Course corrections for the morning watch," Morris replies, his voice carrying the particular weariness of a man who has spent too many hours listening for signals that might mean the difference between safe passage and catastrophe. "Weather should clear by dawn, if the forecasters know what they're talking about." Thomas continues his rounds, understanding that these letters serve a purpose beyond mere communication. They are anchors, connections to a world that continues to exist beyond the gray horizon. In times of uncertainty, when the future feels as murky as the fog that surrounds them, these small reminders of what awaits become essential sustenance. In Captain Campbell's quarters, charts spread across a small table reveal the intricate mathematics of safe passage. The captain traces their route with a steady finger, calculating distances and timing, weighing the known against the unknowable. His coffee has grown cold, but his attention remains focused on the delicate balance between speed and safety that defines every decision in these waters. A letter from his daughter lies beside the charts, its edges worn from repeated reading. She writes of her studies at university, of books and theories, and the bright certainty of youth that the world will bend toward justice and reason. Campbell finds himself both envious of and grateful for her innocence, the luxury of believing in clear answers and predictable outcomes. "The convoy makes good time," he had written to her earlier that evening, his pen careful not to reveal the constant calculations that occupy his thoughts. How do you explain to someone safely ashore that leadership in uncertain times means making decisions with incomplete information? That the weight of responsibility never truly lifts, even in moments of apparent calm? He folds the letter carefully and returns it to its envelope. Outside his porthole, the Atlantic continues its ancient conversation with the wind, a sound that has accompanied countless voyages, countless captains who faced their own versions of the same eternal questions about duty and destination. 3 decks below, Maria Silva pauses in her work to wipe the perspiration from her forehead. The engine room maintains its own rhythm, the steady pulse of machinery that has become as familiar as her own heartbeat. But tonight, as she adjusts the fuel mixture and monitors the pressure gauges, her thoughts drift toward letters she has not yet received. Her family in Portugal knows only that she works aboard merchant vessels, not the specific routes or the particular dangers that accompany these Atlantic crossings. In her last letter home, she had written of the satisfaction of essential work, of the pride that comes from keeping complex systems running smoothly under challenging conditions. What she had not written about was the peculiar intimacy of tending machinery in wartime, the way every sound becomes significant, every vibration a potential warning. There is something almost meditative about this constant attention, this requirement to remain present and alert to the needs of systems that cannot afford to fail. She thinks of her brother, who tends olive groves in the hills above their village. His work, like hers, requires patience and careful observation, the ability to read subtle signs and respond before small problems become large ones. The tools are different, but the fundamental discipline remains the same. Paying attention to what needs attention, maintaining what must be maintained. A photograph tucked behind a pipe shows her family gathered for a harvest celebration. Faces bright with laughter and wine, and the particular joy that comes from work completed and abundance shared. She touches it briefly before returning to her gauges, carrying that image of future reunion into the present moment of necessary duty. Thomas Baker finds himself on the stern deck, looking back at the wake that marks their passage through the dark water. The other ships in the convoy appear as distant lights, small points of warmth in a vast expanse that could easily swallow them all without trace. Yet here they are, maintaining formation, sharing the burden of safe passage through collective vigilance and individual competence. He carries one final letter in his satchel, his own, received that morning and read so many times that the words have become a kind of prayer. His wife writes of spring planting in their small garden, of neighbors helping neighbors through rationing and uncertainty, of the quiet heroism that sustains communities when the men are away, and the future remains unwritten. "I think of you every evening at sunset," she had written, "and wonder what you're seeing from your place on the water. Do you remember the sunset we watched from the hill behind our house the night before you left? I carry that image with me. The way the light touched everything, making even ordinary things seem precious." He does remember. The way the light had indeed transformed their familiar landscape into something luminous and eternal. The way her hand had felt in his as they stood together, knowing that morning would bring separation, but choosing to remain present to that moment of shared beauty. Now, watching the phosphorescence trail behind their ship like scattered stars, he understands that some forms of wealth cannot be measured in cargo manifests or safe arrivals. The letters that travel these waters carry something more valuable than information. They carry the sustained attention of people who choose to remain connected across distance and uncertainty. The night deepens around the convoy, but the essential work continues. In radio rooms and engine spaces, on bridges and in watch stations, people tend the systems that carry them all toward whatever dawn awaits. They carry letters and memories, photographs and promises, the accumulated weight of lives that extend far beyond this particular voyage. This is perhaps the most profound navigation of all. Not just plotting courses across water, but maintaining connection to what gives the journey meaning. In times of uncertainty, when the fog obscures the horizon and the future remains uncharted, these anchors to purpose and relationship become the truest form of wealth. The letters will be answered. The watches will be maintained. The engines will continue their faithful work, carrying not just cargo and crew, but the hopes and commitments that make any voyage worthwhile. Idris. Shadows on the water. But even these anchors, these connections to home and purpose, they cannot entirely silence the whisper that follows every merchant sailor through the North Atlantic. The whisper that speaks of empty bunks and vacant watches, of ships that simply vanished. Thomas feels it most acutely as he passes the lifeboat stations during his evening rounds. The davits stand ready, their tackle properly secured, the boats themselves inspected daily according to regulation. Yet there is something about their very presence, their careful preparation, that speaks to possibilities no one wishes to voice aloud. The convoy has entered what the Admiralty charts mark with careful notation. Grid references that carry weight beyond their simple coordinates. Waters where other convoys have faced their trials. Where the seafloor holds cargo that never reached its destination. And letters that were never answered. Captain Campbell knows these waters, has studied the reports with the methodical attention that command requires. But knowledge, he reflects as he stands on the bridge, does not diminish the weight of responsibility. If anything, it makes each decision more precious. Each choice carries not just tactical consequence, but human cost. The fog has begun to thin slightly, revealing patches of dark water between the ships. In daylight, this clearing might bring relief. But here, in these small hours, visibility becomes a double-edged gift. What you can see can also see you. Maria Silva feels it in the engine room. This heightened awareness that seems to permeate the very steel of the ship. The engines maintain their rhythm, but she finds herself listening more carefully to every variation in their voice. Not from mechanical concern. The machinery runs true, but from that deeper instinct that recognizes when routine transforms into something more consequential. She thinks of her letters home, the ones she writes but cannot send until they reach port, words that accumulate like small prayers, descriptions of ordinary moments that feel suddenly precious in their ordinariness, the taste of morning coffee, the satisfaction of a well-maintained bearing, the sound of rain against the porthole. These details matter more now, not because they are profound in themselves, but because they represent continuity, the assumption that there will be future moments to describe, future letters to write. In the wireless room, leading telegraphist Morris monitors the frequencies with heightened attention. The static carries its usual burden of distant voices, ships reporting position, weather observations, routine communications that bind the scattered convoy together. But beneath the familiar patterns, he listens for something else. The sudden silence that might indicate trouble. The coded urgency that transforms routine into crisis. His logbook shows neat entries marching down the page, times and frequencies, signal strengths and acknowledgements. The careful record-keeping that allows scattered ships to function as a coordinated whole. Yet tonight, each entry feels more significant. Each successful contact, a small victory against the vast indifference of the ocean. The sea itself seems different in these waters. The same Atlantic that has carried them for days, but somehow more present now. More aware. The sound of water against the hull carries a different quality. Not threatening exactly, but more attentive. As if the ocean itself understands the gravity of passage through these particular coordinates, Thomas pauses at one of the bridge wing lookout positions. The sailor on watch, young Henderson from Liverpool, stands with the patient alertness that has become second nature. His binoculars sweep the visible water in careful arcs, not searching for anything specific, but maintaining that state of relaxed vigilance that might catch the first sign of disturbance. They exchange quiet words, nothing profound. A comment about the clearing fog, a question about the next watch rotation. But beneath these ordinary exchanges lies the unspoken acknowledgement that they are, all of them, engaged in something larger than routine passage. The convoy maintains its formation with mechanical precision, each ship holding station, adjusting speed to match the slowest vessel, following the careful choreography that maximizes protection while minimizing confusion. From the bridge, the other ships appear as darker shadows against the dark water, reassuring in their presence, yet somehow emphasizing the vastness that surrounds them all. In the crew quarters, those off watch rest with the particular stillness of men who have learned to find sleep despite uncertainty. Their hammocks sway gently with the ship's motion, and their breathing creates a rhythm that speaks to the human capacity for adaptation. for finding peace within circumstances that offer no guarantee of peaceful resolution. Their personal effects. The photographs tucked into lockers, the letters read and reread, the small mementos that connect them to shore. These items take on added significance here, not as mere possessions, but as anchors to identity, reminders of who they are beyond their current circumstances. The ship's chronometer marks each passing minute with mechanical indifference. Time moves forward regardless of human anxiety or hope. But for those aboard the SS Britannic Hope, each hour safely passed represents progress toward something more than mere destination. Progress toward the continuation of interrupted lives, toward the completion of promises made and duties accepted. Captain Campbell studies his charts once more, but finds his attention drawn to the margins, the spaces between the careful notations, the areas where knowledge gives way to uncertainty, where even the most detailed intelligence cannot predict what the next hour might bring. He thinks of his daughter's last letter, her description of spring arriving in their garden, daffodils pushing through soil that seemed too cold and hard to nurture growth. Yet, there they were, finding a way to bloom despite conditions that suggested impossibility. Perhaps that is what they are all doing here, finding ways to bloom, to maintain hope and purpose and connection, despite sailing through waters that test the very foundations of such faith. The convoy moves forward through the darkness, carrying its cargo of goods and dreams and quiet determination. Each ship a small island of human intention, moving across an ocean that recognizes no such intentions. Yet, moving nonetheless, with the stubborn persistence that has always characterized those who commit themselves to essential work, regardless of the conditions under which such work must be performed. Sunrise and serenity. And as the hours pass in that peculiar suspension of time that occurs when survival becomes the only measure of progress, something begins to shift on the horizon. Not dramatically. Nothing about this moment announces itself with fanfare or sudden revelation. Instead, it arrives as these profound changes often do, quietly, almost imperceptibly, like the way exhaustion finally gives way to rest when you've stopped trying so desperately to force it. The fog that has shrouded the convoy for so many hours begins to thin, not clearing entirely, but loosening its grip just enough to allow something else to filter through. A suggestion of warmth, the faintest hint of light that speaks of dawn, approaching somewhere beyond the gray curtain that has wrapped itself around these ships and their sleeping cargo. Thomas Baker, still at his watch position, notices it first in the quality of the air itself, the way the moisture seems less oppressive, less like a weight pressing down, and more like possibility. He thinks of his father's words about patience, about how the most essential work often requires you to continue long past the point where you can see the results of your efforts. In the engine room, Maria Silva feels it in the rhythm of the machinery, something settling. The engines that have carried them through the night running with that particular steadiness that comes when the worst of the journey has passed. She places her hand against the warm metal, and for the first time in hours, allows herself to believe they will see another day complete its full cycle. Captain Campbell, studying his charts in the wheelhouse, marks their position and realizes they have moved beyond the coordinates where so many others have been lost. The weight of command hasn't lifted. It never entirely does for those who accept such responsibility. But it has shifted into something more manageable, something that feels less like carrying stones and more like carrying seeds. And then, gradually, almost tentatively, the sun begins its ancient work of transformation. first as the faintest suggestion of gold threading through the gray, then as a slow warming that touches the faces of the watch crews and reminds them that there are rhythms larger than their immediate concerns, rhythms that have continued through every crisis, every period of uncertainty, every night when the morning seemed impossibly distant. The convoy maintains its formation, but the ships no longer feel quite so isolated from one another. In the growing light, they become visible as what they have always been, a community of purpose moving together across waters that no longer seem quite so hostile to human intention. The letters in Thomas Baker's satchel seem lighter somehow. The connections they represent feel less fragile, more enduring, as if the simple act of surviving the night has strengthened every bond that matters. Maria Silva emerges briefly from the engine room and stands on deck, watching the sun paint the ocean in shades of amber and gold. She thinks of her family in Portugal and realizes that what she's building here, in this moment, through this work, is inseparable from everything she carries in her heart. The convoy moves forward into the growing light, each ship carrying its cargo of essential goods and quiet determination into whatever challenges await, but carrying them with the knowledge that they have already proven something important about persistence, about the way ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things simply by continuing to do what must be done, even when the fog obscures the destination. Especially then. Charting the course. The morning light streams through the porthole of the chart room as Captain Campbell spreads the navigational charts across the heavy oak table. The paper whispers against itself as he unfolds the familiar coastlines and depth soundings, each marking representing countless hours of careful measurement by men who understood that precision saves lives. His weathered fingers trace the penciled course line they've been following. The route curves gracefully around the known submarine patrol areas, threading between the shallow banks where U-boats cannot dive deep, and the open waters where merchant ships become easy targets. Each degree of bearing has been calculated not just for efficiency, but for survival. The brass dividers feel solid in his hand as he measures distances. 43 nautical miles to the next waypoint. Then, another 67 to the relative safety of the coastal patrol zone. Numbers that represent hope, measured in the steady turning of propellers and the faithful burning of coal in the engine rooms below. There's something deeply satisfying about this work. The methodical plotting of position fixes, the careful consideration of wind and current, the way uncertainty gradually transforms into clarity through patient calculation and accumulated knowledge. Campbell thinks of the young officers who will someday inherit these charts, how they'll learn, as he did, that leadership isn't about having all the answers immediately, but about developing the judgment to ask the right questions, to gather information carefully, to plan with both boldness and humility. He pencils a small notation beside their current position. 0800 hours, clear skies, convoy intact. Simple words that carry the weight of 23 ships and 800 souls continuing their journey across an ocean that yesterday seemed determined to claim them. The chart shows their destination still many days ahead, but it also shows something equally important: how far they've already traveled. The dotted line of their wake stretching back through waters that tested every assumption they held about their own capabilities. Maria Silva appears in the doorway, her engineer's coveralls traded for a clean uniform. "Engines running steady, Captain. We're making good time." Her voice carries the quiet satisfaction of someone whose careful work has held the machinery of progress together through the darkest hours. Campbell nods, then points to a marking on the chart. "We'll alter course here. Take us another 5 degrees north. I want to give those submarine patrol areas an even wider berth." Cautious, she observes, but not critically. Prudent, he replies. There's a difference between the risks worth taking and the risks that serve no useful purpose. As Maria returns to her duties, Campbell continues his methodical work, checking wind forecasts, calculating fuel consumption, planning alternative routes should weather or enemy activity force changes to their carefully laid plans. This is the unglamorous heart of leadership. The hours spent in quiet rooms making decisions that others will never see. The patient accumulation of small advantages that, taken together, create the margin between success and catastrophe. The chart before him represents more than navigation. It's a testament to the power of preparation meeting opportunity, of understanding that the most important victories are often won not in moments of crisis, but in the thoughtful planning that prevents crisis from becoming catastrophe. The convoy maintains its steady course, each ship following the signals from the flagship, each captain trusting in the collective wisdom of charts marked by careful hands and informed by the hard-won knowledge of those who've sailed these waters before, building something larger than any single vessel could accomplish alone. Horizon Watch. The horizon stretches endlessly before Thomas, an unbroken line where gray water meets gray sky. He adjusts his grip on the binoculars, the cold metal warming slightly under his fingers as he sweeps his gaze across the vast emptiness. This is the watch that tests you. Not the moments of crisis, but the long hours of vigilance when nothing happens, when your eyes strain against the distance, searching for shadows that might be periscopes, for the telltale wake of a torpedo cutting through the swells. The ocean reveals nothing, keeps its secrets beneath the surface. You know this feeling, don't you? Standing at your own horizon, scanning for threats you cannot yet see. The competitor moving into your market, the key employee growing restless, the economic headwinds that everyone whispers about, but no one can quite define. Thomas lowers the binoculars for a moment, blinking away the eye strain. The convoy moves in formation around him, steady, purposeful, each vessel maintaining its position through careful attention to the signals from the flagship. There's something profound about this kind of watching, this patient vigilance that asks nothing of you except presence, except the willingness to stand here hour after hour, keeping faith with the possibility that your attention matters. The weight you carry includes this, doesn't it? The responsibility to see what others might miss, to remain alert when your team sleeps soundly, trusting that someone is watching the horizon for all of you. Thomas raises the binoculars again, sweeps left to right, then back again. The rhythm becomes almost meditative, this careful attention to the edge of the visible world, where known meets unknown, where safety meets uncertainty. In the distance, a seabird wheels and dives. For a moment, his pulse quickens. But no, just nature going about its ancient business. The ocean returning to its vast indifference. You understand this vigilance, how it becomes part of you, woven into the fabric of what you're building. The way you find yourself checking your phone at 2 a.m., not because anything urgent demands it, but because the horizon never truly leaves your thoughts. The responsibility to see clearly, to distinguish between real threats and shadows cast by your own exhaustion. Thomas adjusts his position against the ship's rail. The metal deck beneath his feet vibrates with the steady pulse of the engines. Maria's engines, tended with such care in the depths below. Everything connected. Everyone playing their part in this careful choreography of survival. The horizon holds its secrets still. But there's comfort in the watching itself. in the knowledge that someone stands guard while others rest. That vigilance shared becomes vigilance sustained. You carry this too, this willingness to stand watch over what you've built, to scan the horizon not from fear, but from love. Love for the people depending on you. Love for the vision taking shape under your careful tending. The binoculars feel lighter now in his hands. The horizon no less vast, but somehow more familiar, more manageable. Thomas continues his sweep of the endless gray. Patient, watchful, present, knowing that sometimes the greatest service is simply staying awake while others dream. The convoy holds its course, each ship trusting in the eyes that watch, each captain knowing that vigilance shared is vigilance multiplied across the vast uncertainty of these waters. Knitting comfort. Below decks, in the quiet sanctuary of her quarters, Chief Engineer Maria Silva sets aside the weight of pistons and pressure gauges. Her calloused hands, still warm from tending the great engines, reach for something altogether different. A ball of dark blue yarn, knitting needles worn smooth by countless evenings, the beginnings of a scarf, growing stitch by careful stitch. The motion is ancient, rhythmic. One needle through the loop, yarn over, pull through, again and again. Each movement deliberate, measured, like the steady heartbeat of the engines she knows so well. But this rhythm speaks of home, of her grandmother's hands guiding hers through those first uncertain stitches, of winter evenings in Lisbon when the world felt smaller, safer, when the greatest concern was whether the pattern would hold true. The yarn slides between her fingers, soft, familiar, a comfort that no amount of steel and steam can provide. With each stitch, something tangible emerges, something that wasn't there before. In this floating world of metal and uncertainty, she creates warmth. The scarf grows slowly, patiently. No rushing these small miracles of thread and intention. Each row builds upon the last, creating structure from something as simple as twisted fiber and careful attention. You understand this, don't you? This need to create something lasting when everything else feels temporary. When the weight you carry threatens to overwhelm, sometimes salvation lies in the smallest acts of making. Maria's breathing settles into the rhythm of her needles. Click. Pause. Click. The sound barely audible above the distant thrum of engines. But in this quiet space, it becomes a meditation, a prayer worked in wool. She thinks of the person who will wear this scarf. Perhaps her brother, still somewhere in Portugal. Perhaps one of the crew members here, facing the Atlantic's bite on watch. The recipient matters less than the intention woven into every stitch. Love made visible. Care transformed into something you can touch. The blue deepens as she works. Navy blue like the depths beneath them. Like the uniforms they wear. Like the vast sky that will welcome them home. Someday. Each stitch a small act of faith that there will be someone to keep warm, that there will be a winter to prepare for. Her fingers know the pattern now, muscle memory guiding the needles while her mind drifts to gentler shores, to markets filled with fresh bread, to churches where bells mark time in hours, not watch rotations, to a world where the greatest danger is dropping a stitch. The scarf pools in her lap, soft and growing, proof that even here, surrounded by the machinery of war and commerce, the ancient arts endure. The simple human need to create comfort, to transform raw material into something that shelters and soothes. Maria holds up her work, examining the evenness of her stitches. Satisfied, she continues, row after patient row, building something beautiful from the simplest elements. In the morning, she'll return to her engines, to the heat and noise and constant vigilance that keeps them moving through these uncertain waters. But tonight, she knits peace into being, one stitch at a time, creating warmth for a world that needs it, desperately. Drawn together. Down the corridor, the soft murmur of voices draws Thomas from his bunk. The weight of the watch has lifted from his shoulders, replaced by something lighter. The simple pull of companionship. He finds them gathered in the small cabin near the galley. Captain Campbell sits across from Maria, while Morris shuffles a worn deck of cards with practiced ease. The light from a single lamp casts warm shadows on their faces, softening the lines that daylight reveals. "Room for one more?" Thomas asks quietly. Campbell gestures to the empty chair. "Always." "You know this feeling, don't you? After the long day ends, after the decisions have been made, and the urgent emails answered, there's this moment when you can simply be. When the weight you carry can rest on the table beside you, acknowledged, but not consuming." Morris deals with the rhythm of someone who's done this countless times before. The cards whisper against the wooden table. Hearts, diamonds, clubs, spades. Simple symbols that have brought people together across centuries of uncertainty. "What's the game?" Thomas settles into his chair. "Whist," Maria says, arranging her hand, though I suspect Morris has been practicing. Morris grins. "Natural talent, I'm afraid." The captain chuckles, a sound Thomas hasn't heard since they entered these waters. It's remarkable how quickly the atmosphere shifts. The same people who hours ago were calculating distances and fuel consumption, monitoring engines and scanning horizons. Now they're simply four souls sharing a moment of ordinary grace. The first trick is played in comfortable silence. Then, conversation begins to flow as naturally as the cards change hands. Maria speaks of her village in Portugal, where her grandmother taught her to read the weather in the way clouds gathered over the hills. Morris shares stories of radio signals he's caught from distant shores, fragments of music and laughter that remind him the world still turns beyond their small convoy. Captain Campbell, usually so measured in his words, tells them about teaching his daughter to play cards on rainy Sunday afternoons. How she would cheat outrageously and then confess with such elaborate innocence that the confession became more entertaining than the game itself. This is what sustains us, isn't it? Not the grand gestures or the moments of triumph, but these quiet gatherings where we remember we're not alone in what we're building, where the isolation of leadership dissolves into something warmer. Thomas finds himself laughing at Morris's terrible joke about a radio operator and a lighthouse keeper. The sound surprises him. When did he last laugh without calculating its cost? The cards continue their gentle circulation. Hearts to diamonds, to clubs to spades. Each hand different, each requiring its own small strategies and calculated risks. But the real game is this coming together. This choosing to share space and time when both feel precious. Outside, the convoy continues its steady progress through dark waters. The engines maintain their rhythm. The lookouts keep their vigilant watch. All the serious work of survival continues. But here, in this small circle of lamplight, four people have created something else entirely. A pocket of warmth in the vast cold. A reminder that even in the most uncertain times, we don't have to carry everything alone. The weight you bear, it's still there. But tonight, For these few hours, it rests easy, shared among friends who understand. Daybreak. Hope. The cards are put away quietly. The lamp dims to a gentle glow. One by one, they drift back to their bunks, carrying something lighter in their chests. The warmth of connection, the quiet strength that comes from being truly seen. Thomas makes his way to the deck one final time before sleep. The fog has lifted almost completely now. Above, the stars shine with crystalline clarity, each point of light a distant beacon in the vast darkness. The convoy moves in steady formation, each ship maintaining its position with practiced precision. The engines hum their eternal rhythm below. Maria's careful work continues, that steady heartbeat that carries them all forward. In the radio room, the signals flow between vessels. Quiet coordination, the invisible threads that bind them together across the dark waters. Captain Campbell stands at the bridge, charts spread before him, plotting their course toward dawn. His weathered hands move with certainty across the navigational instruments, years of experience distilled into each careful calculation. The weight of command, still there, but somehow more bearable in these peaceful hours before sunrise. The horizon begins to shift, almost imperceptibly at first, a softening of the absolute darkness where sea meets sky. Then, gradually, the faintest suggestion of color, deep purple bleeding into indigo, the promise of morning, still hours away, but already beginning its quiet approach. Thomas leans against the rail, feeling the gentle roll of the ship beneath him. The Atlantic stretches endlessly in all directions, but it no longer feels hostile. The same vast waters that held such menace in the fog now seem patient, eternal. A reminder that storms pass, that darkness gives way to light, that even the most challenging passages eventually lead somewhere new. He thinks of his father's letters, of Maria's knitting needles clicking in gentle rhythm, of the captain's steady presence on the bridge, of the quiet card game and the laughter shared in lamplight, all of it woven together, the serious work of survival and the essential work of remaining human. The horizon brightens almost imperceptibly. A whisper of gold touches the edge of the world. The convoy maintains its steady progress, each ship a small point of light and warmth, moving through the immensity, carrying cargo, carrying hopes, carrying the dreams of people who believe in tomorrow. You know this feeling, don't you? This moment when the weight you carry feels manageable. When the challenges ahead seem less like mountains and more like hills to be climbed, one step at a time. When the work you're building feels connected to something larger, something that matters beyond the immediate struggle. The sunrise comes slowly, then all at once. Gold spills across the water like honey. The sky blooms in shades of amber and rose. The convoy emerges fully from the night, each vessel clear and proud in the growing light. The serious work continues, but bathed now in hope, in the promise of safe harbor ahead. And as Thomas watches the sun climb higher, painting the clouds in brilliant streaks of orange and pink, as the Atlantic transforms from gray uncertainty into a sea of gold, he feels something settle deep in his chest. The quiet knowledge that whatever storms may come, whatever challenges wait beyond the horizon, he and his shipmates will meet them together, carrying forward the light they've found in darkness, the warmth they've created in the cold vastness of the endless, eternal, hope-filled sea.